Hey guys, Lance here again with the Modern Frontier Project. I have some rifles laid out on the tabletop today. I wanted to talk to you about some things, mainly regarding clone rifles and kind of where I sit with the general cloning community and kind of what I've done. So first and foremost, let me kind of start out by saying that cloning rifles is the biggest headache imaginable, regardless of kind of what degree you do. Nothing is ever really satisfactory because unless you buy a NFA transferable M16 lower, you really are just playing pretend. And I don't really have a problem with playing pretend because that's really what most of the gun industry and gun owners do, is we really just kind of LARP. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there to begin with. So where I sit with cloning rifles is it's a degree of separation. So what I mean by that is if I actually think that cloning rifles and like live action adaptations of comic book characters is really analogous here. So if you take Batman, for example, Batman has a very kind of relatively strict amount of character attributes that he has in the comics, right? So he, ironically, no guns, no killing, stuff like that. He has certain attributes. But then the live action versions of him delve into different aspects of that character. Some do it better than others. Some do it worse, but they're all adaptations. And really, when we talk about cloning, whether it's service rifles that you may have carried, or someone else may have carried, like an NSW rifle or something, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about degrees of separation here, and how much you want to delve into one thing or another. So let me start this off with the M16A4 clone you see in front of you. So this is a clone of the rifle I carried when I was attached to 5th Marine Headquarters. I was previously attached to 3rd Battalion 5th Marines, and I got orders cut over to 5th Marine Headquarters. So I qualified in boot camp with an M16A4. In 3.5, I was issued both an M4 and an M4A1. And when I got to 5th Marines, I was issued an M16A4, and I really, really fell in love with the A4 as a rifle there. And so when I got out, I kept looking back at these photos I had of me with the A4, and I'm like, you know what, I really want to build that. But I really wanted to build it in a way that was correct. So really, that comes down to two parts. I'm going to use a trusty bayonet here as a pointer. But, shushing, one of those aspects is the lower here. So as you can see, this is marked Property U.S. Government M16A4, caliber 5.56 millimeter. This is the serial number I had when I was in the Marine Corps with this rifle. It's 101-98616. And the reason I feel comfortable telling you all of that is that that is not the serial number for this rifle. In fact, this is a Bad Attitude tribute lower, so all of the transferable FFL serial number stuff is actually tucked up under here, which means that all the markings on the left side of the receiver are all pretend. They don't matter, right? So I went to my local gun shop, East Valley Tactical, and they did some engraving for me. So Bad Attitude actually did all this property of U.S. government and the selector markings, and you will see that this is marked burst, as it should be. But East Valley Tactical did the FN logo, and then they did the FN manufacturer code. So that was one of the big things for me, is I was totally set on doing an 80% lower, but I found Bad Attitude, and I went ahead with them. And if you're looking at doing clones, whether it's your own rifle or something else, I recommend the Bad Attitude. They're quality lowers. They have a whole bunch of different lower specs and lower colors, whether it's gray or black or whatever. And I would recommend doing that. But the other part of this build was the upper receiver. So the upper receiver for this is a surplus M16A4 receiver. A couple years ago, probably more over 5 years ago at this point, the U.S. government surplused out some M16 receivers that they no longer had a use for. And so I picked this upper off of a dude on Gunbroker for a pretty okay price. It was new in the box. This is a FN upper receiver. I know a lot of guys like cloning Colts. I was issued all FNs. If you were in the military, you were more likely to be issued an FN over a Colt. But I was issued an FN. I want an FN, and that includes the correct markings on the barrel because it is a surplus upper receiver. And so this is all brand new. It shoots really, really well. But actually, before I bought this receiver, I paid probably like $800 for another A4 receiver. But that receiver came with this ACOG, and this is the correct RCO. This is the TA31F RCO A4. So this is specifically calibrated for shooting 62 grains out of a 20-inch barrel. This is the Marine Corps spec. And if you notice, if I can rotate it here, if you notice, I do not have a rear sight. I will include some photos of the rifle I was issued. I did not have a rear sight. In fact, as it's configured here, all I had up front was a PEC 15, the Blue Force gear, standard issue Vickers sling, an RCO, a couple mags, a hope, and a dream. So when it comes to cloning rifles, this is about 99%. This is an easy rifle to clone. This is not a super crazy NSW rifle to clone, but this is about 90%. So let me move this back and I can kind of show you the front end. So the front end up here is, this is a full power PEC 15. This is what they call a chocolate chip PEC. So some of the earlier tan PECs did not have all tan hardware. They had some black hardware. I was issued a chocolate chip PEC. So I bought a used full power chocolate chip PEC. The serial number for this obviously does not match, and same with the serial number for the RCO. Obviously does not match what I was issued. I don't even have my rifle cards anymore, but I don't know how well you guys can see, but you can see those are the correct codes. The FN code for M16s, and I believe M4s, but I could be wrong, is 3S679. This is magnetic particle tested, chambered in 5.56 NATO with a 1 7 twist. So this is about 99% of where you can get with a clone, in my opinion. This is kind of what I judge based off of everybody else's clones. If you're not willing to put this much autistic detail into clones, I fully understand. However, I have some examples of other stuff that are possible, and I would still deem clone worthy that I'll show you, and I'll kind of go over. But this is my upper level of cloning. This is about as autistic as I would ever get with it, and about as autistic as I would ever recommend anybody else get with it. Okay, another one of my clones I have is a M16A2 clone. I'm a big M16A2 dude. I prefer the A2 over the A1. I do think the sights are better. I do think that the Marine Corps and the Army were both cooking when they came up with the M16A2. As much as the Army wants to bitch, they were a part of the process, but that is a video for a different date. As you can see, this is on a bad attitude lower. This barrel assembly is actually from that A4 upper that I talked about earlier. So this is a Colt barrel on a Colt A2 upper. I bought the A2 upper separately, put the barrel assembly on. And then because I'm kind of sticking with the whole Colt theme here, I went with another bad attitude lower. However, this lower has the cat knocking stuff over, which is this logo, which is a play on the Colt logo. And I didn't really plan for this, but the serial number for this, the fake serial number, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. This is the real serial number for this, is ends in 069. So that was kind of a nice surprise when I went to pick it up for my FFL. They thought I totally planned it. I didn't. Bad attitude if you're watching this. Thank you very much. On top is a Brownell's continuation of the Colt scope. I wouldn't necessarily call it a repro because the factory that made the original Colt scopes is making these. I really bought this because I really wanted to try it out. I'm kind of 50-50 on if I like it. I think I'd like it more in a carbine kind of setup instead of a rifle setup. However, there are photos of mainly Marine Corps squad leaders running bare rifles like this with the Colt scope. It was a possibility. It wasn't wildly fielded in the Marine Corps, but it was fielded. It was out there. Some guys did have them. This is a clone that's like, oh, I have these parts, I'll throw them together. So that's kind of really where I sit with that. It's not as autistic as the A4, but it's, these are correct parts that would be together in an arms room somewhere. Okay, so speaking of parts being in an arms room somewhere that they possibly could have come together, this is my M23 grenade launcher build. So back in the day when I was looking at buying a house, I was like, you know what, if I buy a house, I'll get myself a whittled tweet and I'll buy myself a grenade launcher. I live in a state where it's allowed. I live in a free state where it's allowed. And I bought a house, so I bought a grenade launcher. And I always knew I wanted a long barrel grenade launcher. But honestly, I was kind of sick of everybody on the internet doing A2 builds with grenade launchers. I wanted to do something else. I know I didn't want it on a carbine, but I did know I wanted it on a rifle. So I found this photo of this Marine doing a BZO for his M16A4 with a grenade launcher prior to the invasion of 2003. And he had a detachable carrying handle with the Colt scope attached. I'll overlay a photo of this. And I actually had a detachable carrying handle on here for a while. And as much as I like shooting iron sights, I didn't like shooting iron sights on this rifle.
Yeah, that guy right in the fucking center.
The grenade launcher makes this so cumbersome that it didn't really feel comfortable. So I was like, okay, well, what kind of other optics may or may not have been in inventory in the Marine Corps at the time? I know for sure that the Army used aim-point comp M2s. And so my thought was, okay, a red dot on here would be good. An ACOG, I don't really want to spend the money on another ACOG. And it's kind of played out. And there would be no real difference between my service rifle A4 and this A4. So I was like, you know what, let me put a red dot on here, see what I like, and if I don't like it, I can use it for something else. I loved it. So I bought a Brownells upper. So this is a Brownells 20-inch upper. I threw the CAC grenade launcher on it. This is the CAC Cutie hardware. It's kind of a pain in the ass. Honestly, I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend the Brownells uppers for doing this sort of project, because the barrel taper here was a huge pain in the ass and didn't drop in like my FN or my Colt. So the Brownells definitely have a thicker profile here than what would be normal on like an FN or a Colt. So if you're looking to do something like this, I wouldn't necessarily use a Brownells upper, but it's been perfectly reliable otherwise. I have a CAC folding rear sight on the back. Again, a bad attitude lower. No, no special serial number on this one. But this is definitely a range toy. I love shooting this grenade launcher, but I wouldn't necessarily call this one clone correct either. Okay, so speaking of things that may or may not have been in parts rooms, this is Damien's Mark12 Upper. So this is a PRI Mark12 Upper. He has a Leupold Mark5 HD 3.5 to 18 on top, I think. But you can see that none of this is really clone correct. The main things that stand out are the optic and the lower. And if you're keen-eyed, the buttstock that we'll get to eventually. But the lower is a Silencer. The trigger is a Geisley SSAEX with lightning bow. I can't remember what it is. And then a BCM Mod 3 grip, I think. So most of this rifle is not clone correct, and that's okay because he was not going for being a clone rifle. He was just kind of always wanted a Mark 12. But one of the things that I really convinced him to do, and is really baller, is this. So this is an M110 stock. It is heavy. It really balances out this rifle. It obviously makes it much heavier. But you have the cool ability to have an A1 length with... Well, helps if I unlock it. But you have the ability... You have the ability to take the buttstock out. So this is cool. This is one of those things where it's like, it definitely probably happened at some point, but there's no photographic evidence. So we really can't say this is a clone, not to mention the lower and the pistol grip and the optic aren't clone correct. But that's okay, because we're not really shooting for clone correct. We're just shooting for using some parts that are used on clone rifles sometimes. Okay, For my last trick, I'm going to show you guys a rifle that I'm actively working on. This is not done. So this is a clone of an NCR Service Rifle. I am a huge fan of New Vegas, and I'm not a huge fan of M16 and M16A1s, but I love the Service Rifle enough to want one. And this is about pretty much the only configuration I'd ever want an M16A1 in. This is actually technically, so this is a Brownells XM16E1 upper. So this has the chrome bolt carrier group. It has the 3-prong flash hider. I forget who makes this wood furniture, but I will overlay it on the video who makes it. It's really high quality. And then again, a bad attitude lower. So these guys do service rifle lowers. And again, the information is on the inside here. So what I did for the fake serial number was I put the ID tag information that you'd put into the console in New Vegas to spawn one of these rifles, and that's 00E9C3B. So that's the quote-unquote, clone serial number because it comes from the game. Other than that, I mean, it says Long Branch Arsenal, Ontario, USA territory. This is a cool rifle. I have not, actually, I don't think I've shot it yet. Obviously, one of the things that bugs me is the difference between the lower and the upper color. I'm probably going to go to my local gun shop and get this lower Cerakoted in like a Colt Gray, just so it matches. I thought about painting the upper black, but it just seems easier to Cerakote the lower. And I bought this lower before they did the Colt Gray lowers. But this is a cool rifle. This is what I'm actively working on, and hopefully you guys see more of it in the future. But when it comes to clone rifles, that's kind of all I have. I think the lesson to be had with cloning any rifle is that you should really have fun with it. Whether you're doing something fun like this NCR Service Rifle or you're going crazy with an A4 clone or an NSW clone, there's a whole spectrum of things that you can do. What I don't recommend doing is buying just any 10-inch upper on any bullshit lower, throwing any optic configuration on it, and stating that your rifle is clone correct. You will be laughed at. I will laugh at you, and you will probably laugh at me for being a nerd. But that's just the way the world works. So until next time, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys later.